This is your Sci-Fi Now. We're headed into a review of the USA Network show Colony, Season 2, Episode 10, Garden of Beasts. The title is likely a reference to a novel, In the Garden of Beasts, which is based on the true story of an American ambassador who lived in Berlin in 1933 and saw the growing evils of Nazi Germany. We see a bit of the San Fernando block for the first time. It is apparently pretty lawless since these guys have turned their workshop into a kind of bunker. San Fernando is the block north of the LA block. The LA block walls are shown in this Google map here. I'll put the link below. I'm pretty sure there are just 3 blocks in the LA colony, with Santa Monica being the other. Despite their impressive defenses, including night vision goggles and a minigun, the minigunner gets bagged easily and potified. I'm pretty sure this is a form of hibernation. I would say stasis would be too strong a word. The pilot mentions walkers outside the walls. It actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense because the flying drones are so effective anyway. And it appears to be a reference to Company Man, the scene where Snyder and Jenkins were seeing something outside the prison walls. I think that was a walker. This is our best view of it. I think it may just be lights on a pole. It could be. In that case, the walkers are just a scam by this pilot's group. Perhaps they can get the LA colony to surrender if they think they're surrounded by a bunch of these walkers. Another thing that might be a scam are the Blackjacks, the guys in the black jackets. I see at least 4 pieces of evidence for this. The first is that Van Warmerdam appeared subtly startled by Snyder, and, like a chihuahua, he only went on the attack after Snyder turned his back. The second is Katie's plan to pose as Blackjacks, because if they can pass for Blackjacks, then anybody can pass for Blackjacks. The Blackjacks use intimidation rather than ID to get through the gateways. The third piece of evidence is that they were operating in northern England, apparently outside of any colony. The final suspicious thing is the screens that Broussard saw in their armored vehicle. The information is broken into 6 sections: target status, class, vitals, Hynek score, home address, and known contacts. The most suspicious part of this is the Hynek section. It's probably named after Dr. Joseph Allen Hynek. He was a UFOologist, and you remember the movie Close Encounters. He did this classification system like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's all a bunch of BS in my opinion, and that calls into question whether the parameters there mean anything at all. It's difficult to make sense of them anyway because, like the surgeon's intellectual number is lower than Will's. If this section is a bunch of BS, then the Blackjacks themselves might be a bunch of BS. The vitals section has CO2 tolerance, RSA BRS, and C3H6O3 tolerance. So we have carbon dioxide tolerance, then RSA is respiratory sinus arrhythmia, which is the relation between heart rate and breathing, and BRS is baroreflex sensitivity, which is the ability to maintain a constant blood pressure. Finally, C3H6O3 represents a number of chemical compounds, but all the other parameters were about heart and breathing, so in this context we can deduce that they are referring to lactic acid, which accumulates when breathing is slowed or stopped. For example, hibernation is hard on a bear's heart due to the buildup of lactic acid. Because I'm suspicious of the Blackjacks, I want to be very cautious in interpreting what it is they're trying to do. I don't even know if the pods that the Blackjacks are loading will go to the prison camp and go up on their transport, or if the Blackjacks will just smuggle them out themselves. Imagine that perhaps the first colony was created to protect civilization from some sort of disaster, maybe a solar flare or an economic downturn. It hasn't gone so well because a lot of people have died. There's no food. More people are going to die. Effort by the Blackjacks might be sort of a second colony to save a few people from this colony, either from itself or from a future disaster such as a nuclear war or an asteroid strike. The Blackjacks can use lasers to paint targets. This is done by militaries today, and it raises the chance that drones are just human technology. Back in Season 1, we saw the drones use what was basically a minigun. In Season 2, we saw them use what must be microwave because it splattered people without breaking ropes. And now we see a new weapon. It's perhaps a RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, or something similar. Actually, I'm not even sure that the Blackjack was trying to direct the drone. He might have only been trying to warn Broussard, indirectly through Will, that the drone was incoming, because the laser was painted on the back. So usually that would be where the attack would come from, whereas the attack came from more of the side front. The drone would not have had a line of sight to that. Might have gotten communicated from another drone, I suppose, but it didn't seem that way. Another suspicious thing in that scene was Morgan's screen. At the top it says what appears to be vector, altitude, and heading. Now the altitude is 23,800 or something like that, which, this is LA, so we should be at about sea level. And there's no way her little microdrone could fly at that sort of altitude and maintain a steady picture. Plus, she appears to be repairing the microdrone using a chip puller, which is not an appropriate tool. I've been suspicious of Morgan for a long time, since season 1, and in season 2, I really got suspicious of her with the plot about the colony extinction. All that data seemed to be BS. Maddie was pretty unlikable this episode, and if you remember, Lindsay was pretty unlikable just before she was killed. So this could be bad news for Maddie. She might get killed, or I think more likely hibernated, perhaps rescued later by Katie and given some sort of ability to redeem herself. So of course, the leader of the Red Hand has her office in the middle of a silent disco. I had guessed that the leader of the Red Hand would be Hennessy, and that still could have been true, because remember, Broussard was second to Quayle until Quayle was assassinated, and so perhaps she moved up likewise. And Frankie's mother somehow knows a little bit about Bram. This could be because she has some association with Snyder, but more likely, Maya is alive. I speculated that before because the bomb had a circuit board on it, suggesting it didn't need to be manually detonated. And also, there was a petite red hat next to Snyder when the transport was exploding, and it seemed kind of suspicious. They spent a lot of camera time on her. There was also a petite red hat in this episode. I don't know if it was Maya, though. That wraps it up for this week. Let me know in the comments below, how the hell can Broussard walk around with no disguise when the surveillance annex quickly found a video of Emmett?